Hello, hello, leaders. Hello, hello, leaders. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. If you are looking for executive presence redefined, this conversation we're going to have today, you're in the right place. Now, just to let you know, this is the first time I'm using LinkedIn audio. We've done plenty of LinkedIn Lives. I've just never used the audio feature. So I'm also recording this in the background so that I can keep this recording for later and also make it available for you online. But I want to welcome everyone who is here. So let me start very briefly by introducing myself, and then I'm going to let you know how I'm hoping this conversation will go and how I'm hoping that you will all be engaged and really interactive, because that's why I chose an audio event for this, because I understand they can be a lot more interactive. Y'all can come up and actually share your thoughts and hear each other. And that sounded like a lot of fun, in particular for this conversation. So to introduce myself, in the event we haven't been in a space together before, and this is your first time hearing about me or interacting with me, my name is Assia Bridiesca Hedin. I'm an executive coach and leadership trainer, former management consultant turned executive coach. And really what I do is I help accomplished professionals become influential, sought after leaders. And I know there are a whole lot of ways to do that, but we do that without overworking, people pleasing, or selling out. Because I think if that is the cost, then, right, it's not necessarily worth pursuing. So how we do that, and the primary tenets, and you'll see it, as we're having this conversation today, but the primary tenets of my approach to leadership are that success at almost any endeavor, even personal, if you want to think about it this way, really comes from one of two things: high quality decision making on your part, right? Meaning you don't get reactivated and triggered and all that good stuff. And strategic alignment, meaning that most of your effort, activity, action, focus is directed towards what you're actually trying to accomplish and aligned with that. That also brings with it a whole lot of underlying assumptions, like that you actually know what you're trying to accomplish, you understand what the focus should be, all those good things. But I also am finding, and this is kind of a spoiler alert, that this is precisely what establishes executive presence versus, right, the old and tired perspective of executive presence being something that's owned by the dominant group and not necessarily acceptable to others. And it's interesting because sometimes people, as I work with both groups and individuals, they'll come to me saying, well, one of my goals is I want to have more executive presence. I'm like, okay, what does that mean to you? Right. And we always start with, what does that mean to you? And I want to hear from all of you here. What does that mean to you to have executive presence? What does it mean to you? And let me see. You'll be sure you can, use the reactions. I'm hoping that there's an opportunity for you to drop notes. Otherwise, you can just raise your hands. I believe that's how that works. But again, I do want to hear, let's start the conversation with what executive presence means to you. I just talked about, what it seems to have meant in the past. And we know that that's evolving. That's evolving because we're no longer accepting that perspective, that there's this elusive idea, and y'all can't see my face and my arms and stuff, but I'm pointing over there. There's this elusive notion of what executive presence is, and it means something other than what we already are. Executive presence is never what you already are. Have you ever noticed that? It's never, I have executive presence. It's often, if you have a moment of feeling like I think I'm showing up, I'm, feeling powerful. The moment our confidence takes a little bit of a hit, right, we feel like we've lost it. So that's interesting, because we think that executive presence means something about having this shiny exterior that's infallible. We think that it is assimilating as closely as possible to the dominant group, yes, the quote unquote decision makers and the people in power. We think it's leaving our natural tendencies at the door, because clearly we're not executive presence. So that means we need to leave more of ourselves at the door, right? And look around, see what else everybody else is doing. And then From there, we'll go ahead and adjust what we're willing to show of ourselves. So when you think about executive presence in that way, in terms of what are you willing to relinquish of yourself in order to better assimilate to the dominant group, doesn't that call the question whether maybe we're not thinking about it the right way? So anyway, let's have this conversation again. I want this to be interactive. I want to hear from all of you. So feel free also, to comment. I think I can see your comments in real time as you're dropping them on the event page. And who's up? Who wants to share? What are your thoughts on executive presence? And also, how do you know if you have it? How do you know if you have it? I want to hear from some of you. Let's see if I can see any. If you're willing to come online, give me a quick thumbs up or some emoji. Oh, y'all can't be feeling too private and shy right now, can you? We'll continue talking, but let me tell you, the conversation is definitely going to be more meaningful if we can get some of you online and engaging. So give me a quick emoji if you're willing to come online and just make this a conversation. And maybe we can bring a few of us on and just hear your thoughts, hear how you've experienced executive presence at work. Oh, excellent. Solita, I see you. Let's see. I think I pressed the button. Solita, welcome.
Good.
Yay,
Good
you made
afternoon.
it.
Yes, you know what? I was like, let me come on stage and have this conversation with you as well, because sometimes, we just need that one person to say yes, and then everyone else will join in the conversation. So good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm so glad that you joined. I know I sent you a note, I think it was yesterday, just saying that, the timing was perfect and it'd be great if you could join the session. So I'm so glad that you did join. So I want to welcome you, and I would, you'll probably do a better job of introducing yourself. So can you tell us a little bit about you, Solita?
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I did get the invite and I actually just clicked on it. But yeah, I'm Solita Roberts. I'm a confidence and personal styling coach. I work with emerging women leaders to really work on their confidence, because I realize that most women, it's not when they look at their personal style, it's not a matter of how they actually look, but how they feel and the level of confidence in the clothes that they wear. So my role is to guide them in that process of owning, first of all, acknowledging some of the things that may have held them back from embracing their personal style, embracing and feeling great in their style, and defining what that looks like for them. So I'm happy to have this conversation on executive presence, because I think about it similar the way that you think about it. And I think this is a way that we should be all thinking about executive presence as we go forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I agree. I love what you said about it's not even so much what you're wearing, it's how you feel about yourself and think about yourself based on what you're wearing, right? In a perfect world, we're always going to feel completely, right, empowered and kind of owning ourselves and our brilliance, no matter what we're wearing. When we're wearing our bonnet, right? When you're running around in exercise shorts. But we know that that's often not the reality. So
Exactly.
yeah. So now when clients come to you looking to build up their executive presence, can you share some of the words that they use as they describe it?
So first of all, I'm going to say this. After doing my own research and just my own feeling on, some of the things that you touched on, it's like I define executive presence as this idea as to how the world expects us to show up, right? Someone else's definition as to who we should be and how we should show up, what we should wear, how we should speak, what skills we should have. And if we align closely to them, then we have that executive presence. And so for me, I'm like, can we change it from executive presence, looking at for someone to have this executive presence and more of what is your personal presence? What's the impact that you have when you walk into the room? How are you connecting and engaging with the people in the room? What are the conversations like? What are you leaving people with? And so some of the things that, you know, when women come to me and we're talking about what do you want your personal style to be, because your personal style is more than the clothes. It's part of your branding. It's part of how you show up in the world and how you want people to connect with you. And so some things they're like, oh, you know what? I want to feel strong. I want to feel confident. I want to feel and be myself. And that's one of the things that I find with executive presence. Like the old definition of it, I should say, is that women, you know, emerging women leaders, they always feel as though, okay, I'm going up for this leadership position. How are people or within my industry who are leaders dressing? I was like, no, I want to be myself, but at the same time, I don't want to, and this is the fair, I don't want to stand out too much, right? So I don't want to wear that bold pink blazer, but I still want to fit in and at the same time be myself. So that's kind of the conundrum that most women, when they come to me, it's like, how can I be myself, but at the same time try to fit into this world of what executive presence is?
Right. Right. I love that because it's such a kind of conundrum, right? I want to be myself, but I don't want to stand out too much. And I think I started the conversation with making a comment about, you know, we often approach executive presence around, well, how much of myself am I safe bringing in the door with me, right? Or how much do I need to leave at the door and, you know, leave at home in order to be taken seriously? So yeah, I love everything that you just said about some of those questions. And for the, you know, the rest of you who are in this conversation, definitely let us know if, and certainly raise your hand or request to speak, if you're hearing something different or seeing something different. You know, the intention here is to have as broad a conversation and perspective on executive presence as possible. And I think you're hearing both from Salita and from me. And again, we did not have this conversation in advance. I just invited her, you know, to the session and to come on, and knew you all would love hearing from her simply because she seems to embrace this perspective of, you know, your style comes from the inside out. I think that was one of the things that caught my eye. It was less about what you're wearing and more about what you're thinking and feeling, right? And how can what you're wearing just support that? Yeah.
Influence how you feel. I like to say that style is it's 10% external and 90% internal. So it's how do you feel, one, about yourself? How do you feel about your body? How do you feel about the things that are in your closet? And once you get clear on like isolating those feelings and seeing that some of them are based on everyone else's opinion of who you should be, and you really align your style with who you are, then you're able to build, in this case, we're talking about executive presence, you're able to craft your wardrobe to represent who you are as it is when it comes to your executive presence, how you want to show up. In this case, I refer to it as personal presence, just building personal presence. But yeah, I appreciate you having me. I'm going to exit the stage so someone else can come up. I don't want to take over.
Okay, well, you're more than welcome.
I warmed everyone up now, so let's get on stage. Let's, you know, just add your 2 cents. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Salita. And Gregory, I see you. You just joined. He's another a very gifted stylist, and he is often after me, and I'm sure shaking his head when he sees some of what I choose to wear because I don't always follow instructions all that well. And the other thing I'm going to call out about, you know, Greg, is that he very much is a believer in, you know, your style needs to be an expression of who you are, not a suppression of who you are. And I think that we often approach style from that other side, in particular when we're having this conversation on executive presence. So, and Gregory, if you're willing to come up and share some thoughts, please let me know and just hit the, you know, request to speak button, because you're always welcome. But I want to go back to, we started going down this path of, how much of myself do I bring? And there was a reference made to, how do you feel in your body and about your body? And a part of it is how you feel in your body and about your body. But let's be honest, how much of it is what does society feel about my body? If you're in a larger body, if you're in a differently abled body, yes, um, potentially in an older body, society has very strong perspectives, right, on that. And they're not necessarily uplifting and positive, but rather they're coming from a place of limitation and lack, as though there's something missing or something wrong, as though executive presence and a larger body are mutually exclusive, right? As though executive presence and a certain age are mutually exclusive, or executive presence and a certain income level are mutually exclusive. And redefining executive presence means that it can coexist with everything that you are, so long as you're bringing what's really central to it. And that's what I really wanted to talk about in today's conversation, that executive presence, what I'm going to propose and how I suggest you think about it, is those kind of two components I mentioned at the very beginning. That success comes from a couple of primary areas of focus. One being high quality decision making, right? And the other one being strategic alignment, meaning alignment with what you say is important and what you're trying to create, the outcome you want to have, the income you want to have, the impact, and yes, I guess the income you want to have. But the reason I focus on those two is because everything in my coaching programs lines up to improve one or both of those, right? So one or both of those are going to be impacted with every single conversation we have, because that is what creates executive presence. When you're able to communicate and show that you have high quality decision making, right? That you're not reacting, but in fact, you're responding in alignment with what's actually important and meaningful to that conversation, to the stakeholders, to the client, to the board, et cetera, you've got executive presence. When you're able to have conversations at that level of the people you're talking to, right, with that frame of reference, and I don't mean thinking the same, but I mean having the same conversation. So I'll give you a quick example. This would be like you're running into, the CEO of your organization, just at the hall or at the coffee counter or whatever the case is, and they ask you how things are going, right? A lot of people will simply respond with a fine. Yes. They'll simply, throw out there, oh, fine, or share something unimportant and inconsequential. What I propose through strategic alignment is that you always know what's going on with your organization's strategic plan and where you fit into that. If you don't know what's on your organization's set of priorities, that's assignment number one. Assignment number two is to understand where you fit in that set of priorities. And then the only thing more important than those two things is understanding where your organization fits in your strategic plan. Right, so I'm going to say it in a slightly different way. The only thing more important than knowing where you fit in your organization's strategic plan is knowing where they fit into yours. Right, so there's a lot of wrapped up in there because there are a lot of assumptions about your level of awareness and alignment. Right, awareness of what's actually important to the decision makers in your organization, to the higher ups, to the boards, to the key clients, et cetera. And awareness of where you fit into that, or how you can create and follow the narrative of how you contribute to that. So let me know, drop me some emojis and just let me know if this is resonating. Because I want you to understand that executive presence is purely in your hands and it has nothing to do with what you're wearing. Now, am I suggesting that what you wear and how you present yourself does not matter? Of course not. It does matter because it likely matters to you and it likely impacts the way you feel as you show up. What we want to do is divorce executive presence from from it being an expression of something not you, right? In the past, executive presence has occurred as something not me. Like I mentioned, there's the yardstick out there, there's some elusive executive presence, and then there's me over here. And I don't have that. And nothing could be further from the truth. Again, if you are clear on what you're there to accomplish, how you fit into the big picture, and you're able to articulate that in a way that exemplifies your clarity, again, doesn't even mean everybody needs to agree, but that shows your clarity and your awareness, you have executive presence. Even saying, I don't know, brings with it executive presence, yes? So long as it's followed by the right questions. So when you see executive presence through the lens of high quality decision making, in other words, making sure you're not getting hijacked, making sure you don't only feel confident when certain people are not around, or making sure that you can only engage intelligently when you feel like you are the senior subject matter expert in the room, right? It's not about that. Executive presence means you show up, you recognize what you're there for, and you're able to contribute, even if it's simply by asking questions and requesting additional clarification. Executive presence isn't how expensive is my suit. Executive presence isn't, am I wearing, I remember, so this is related, you'll know why I'm telling you the story. I, ran into a colleague somewhere, and she said she was interviewing with a certain organization. I said, oh, that's great. Are you interviewing today? And she said, oh my God, no, with this hair? She's a Black woman and her hair was curly at the time. And she said, with this hair, again, as though interviewing and curly hair or kinky hair or dreadlocks or anything else like that are mutually exclusive. And that's the danger of that old definition, outdated definition of executive presence. That danger is that we believe that who we are and what it is are on some level, right? If you're honest with yourself, mutually exclusive. If we didn't believe that, we wouldn't feel like we need to leave part of ourselves at the door. So again, let me know if this is ringing true for you, if this is resonating. And again, if you have any comments, because I'd love to hear how this has shown up for you. So that's one question. And the other question is, how will you show up differently if you know that executive presence is the result of high quality decision making and strategic alignment? Right? How can you show up differently when you recognize those two? Now, I do have a quick few questions that I'd put together. Hold on, let me see if I can find these here. Made some notes yesterday. Yeah, as I was looking back through, the concept of executive presence, one of the things that surfaced was there are often communication courses, or there were in the past, certainly even up until the last few years, focused on women and helping women have executive presence. And the idea of executive presence was having women communicate more like men. Yes? Let me know if that rings true for you all. And I always thought that was interesting, as though there wasn't some inherent, already pre-existing value in communicating, quote unquote, like a woman. Yes. So I always thought that was amusing, because again, there's this notion of mutually exclusive, and I'm not it. So we're going down. Let's see if I can find those questions for us. And please feel free also to get your questions ready if you have some as well. Okay, so these are yes/no questions, and I'm only creating them because I only created them because I wanted you to be able to reflect on maybe how executive presence lives in your world. Yes? Or where to start. That might actually be a better way to put it. Potentially where to start. But when you consider being in a room in a high stakes conversation, what has to be in place for you to feel confident? Right, so give that one some thought. What has to be in place for you to feel confident? Now, in terms of yes and no questions, here's what I want you to consider. Do you feel confident when meeting a new group of people? Do you have a compelling introduction that actually communicates the value you bring or your focus, your contribution, etc.? Do you have ease in talking about what you and your team does to other people, either inside your organization or outside of your organization? Now, this is one of my pet peeves. Do you go to networking events and conferences only to leave with a bag full of swag, but no new opportunities? Do you let opportunities to connect and engage pass you by because you're afraid you might say the wrong thing? So let me know what comes up when you start to consider some of those. What comes up when you start to consider some of those? Because often what comes up is people focus on how many no's there are, yes? On how many no's there are. So I want you to consider if you just improved one of those, if you improved one of those no's, what would that be? And what kind of impact would it have? Especially as we're talking about this experience of executive presence now being something that you own, and that simply has to be with the related to the quality of your decision making, your strategic alignment, and your ability to communicate both. See, all of those yes and no questions were just little examples of how we communicate our executive presence. That's all they are. They're little examples of how we communicate our executive presence. So if you're pulling back and you had a lot of no's, you're bypassing those opportunities. Right? These are, when it comes to executive presence, it doesn't mean you always need to be talking or contributing, but certainly as a leader, silence is not golden. I know we've heard that before, and if you don't have something smart to say, don't say anything at all. But I want you to consider what kind of gripping pressure that places on you when you feel like you're only invited to speak when you have something smart to say. Can you imagine? Can you imagine only being invited to speak when you have the best thing to say in the room? So I want you to consider, what if instead of thinking that you need to have something brilliant to say, you had a good question to ask to help explore what's actually important about the situation, to show interest in the priorities of the other person or organization, to establish yourself as a curious mind who's always looking to understand different perspectives. Again, it's not about always having the answer. It's not about always, it's about wearing the best suit and having the perfectly rehearsed contribution, but about making an actual contribution that is the direct result of, yet again, high quality decision-making and strategic alignment. Because you're not going to make very good decisions when your brain is hijacked by the idea that my title isn't as high as everybody else's here, right? I don't have the same background as everybody else here. Or other ideas like, there's nobody else in this room who looks like me. So oftentimes, for a lot of the folks I work with, they may be the first and only. But I want you to notice the role that those concerns can play in how you show up, in how well you communicate high quality decision making and strategic alignment. Because more often than not, left to your own devices and to a default way of being, we'll just hush up because, again, we're operating off of that old notion that we need to be really impressive. But I want you to think about last time you engaged with somebody who was trying to be impressive. Did you feel impressed? Or did you feel like it was a missed connection? Like you were getting some sort of maybe inauthentic veneer versus a feel for who this individual was. See, when we're engaging with people and our intention is to be impressive, there's a good chance we're not going to be impressive, right? And we're going to lose them at hello. Why? Because our brain is kind of over here coming from this place of judgment and what do I need to do, say, and how do I need to hold my face and my hands so that I seem impressive? I want to invite you to throw all of that out the door and instead actually engage with an interest in understanding what's going on over there and bringing with you your high quality decision making and strategic alignment. And again, strategic alignment, when we're at, for example, a conference, might simply be that you want to meet a couple of people from each of these different organizations. So now you go about introducing yourself with your confident, solid introduction, which, by the way, is a key to executive presence. And that one is actually non-negotiable, right? You need to be able to introduce who you are and what value you bring. But you introduce yourself to people and you let them know what's next for you and who you're hoping to connect with. And it's interesting because I find how reluctant we are to let people know what we're after. We feel like we are somehow lessening or dampening our executive presence or our individuality or our capability by articulating where it is that we would like an introduction or their support or just their perspective and input. And I want to encourage you to start to redefine your own executive presence to mean that you actually share and articulate what is important to you. You actually share and articulate what's next. Okay, so I'm going to pause there and see if we have, let me see if any of you, oh. Uh-oh. Can you all still hear me? Somebody just sent me a note saying that my audio is out. Let me know if you all can still hear me. Oh, you did? You lost me. Okay, let's try this again. Hello, hello, can you hear me? I heard you all lost me. You still there? Let's see, Valerie just sent me a note. Can you hear me now? Uh-oh, what is happening? Hello, hello, can you all hear me? Am I back yet? Oh, no. Okay, I don't know what's going on or why we lost sound. Let me reload. Hi there, I just reloaded. Let me know if you can hear me. Not sure what happened there. Okay, you can hear me. Yay! Okay, folks, again, this was our first time using LinkedIn audio, so I don't know what just happened there, but I reloaded my page and it sounds like you can hear me again. So we went way over time already, but I do want to invite any, question or conversation. And at the same time, I'm going to invite you to, you'll see another event I have here on LinkedIn, and it is a 2-hour professional introduction session. And I really wanted to offer this particular 2-hour working session specifically because the professional introduction is non-negotiable. Right? You're always meeting new people. And if you're not meeting new people for fear that you don't know how to meet new people or what to say, then this will solve that. So all that said, I want to wrap up the conversation, but I want to make sure that there's time for any questions or anyone who wants to come up and share any thoughts. Did we hit on what you were hoping to hit on? Do you have at least now access to a different way of viewing executive presence that's completely in your hands, meaning high quality decision making and strategic alignment and your ability to communicate both, versus having executive presence be in the hand of someone potentially from a dominant group, judging, whether who you are and executive presence are mutually exclusive. Because that's what we really need to leave behind. Right? That's the important piece right there. There is no mutually exclusive when it comes to executive presence. You are it and it is you. So now how are you going to communicate that effectively, confidently, intelligently? Okay. So as we're about to wrap up, if anybody's willing to come on, want to share a few words, now is the time. Just go ahead and hit the button to request to speak next to your photo icon, and I will bring you up. And more than one of you can be on to speak at a time. So feel free to hit the button if you want to engage in the conversation, and I will bring you on up. Otherwise, we can wrap up, and I'm looking forward for you to actually revisiting how you attend your next meeting, given that you already have executive presence, right? How you engage in that next interview, given that you already have executive presence, and focus your attention on your introduction so that there's never any pause or hesitation on you being able to engage with whether it's decision makers, clients, or even potential new friends. But simply getting out of your own way and being able to articulate who you are and why you're awesome, really is the bottom line. Okay, so I don't see anybody volunteering or jumping at the chance to speak. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up then. But I hope this has been helpful. Feel free to reach out to me, drop me any questions. I hope to see some of you at the 2-hour professional introduction workshop that's coming up on May 14th. And again, you will find that, actually, let me make sure I didn't just give you the wrong date. Is that May 14th or May 16th? I just don't want to give you the wrong one. So you can find it. Let's see. It is on the 16th at 4 p.m. Pacific, and that would be 1 p.m. Eastern. So that is the professional introduction workshop. It's 2 hours. It's only $97, and everyone is going to get individualized attention. So definitely join. It's a way to interact in a small group and to finally knock that out of the way so that it's no longer an issue and no longer standing in the way. Okay, folks, send me any questions after the fact. I'm always on LinkedIn, so I'm glad to respond. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you. Okay, bye everyone. Go out there and lead.